Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning into FTF News Live. We have an interview today with Tom Jordan, President and CEO of the legendary Wall Street trading technology consultancy, Jordan & Jordan. Tom founded J&J in 1990 and then co-founded the Financial Information Forum, FIF, in 1996. J&J has been in the news recently as it has sold key parts of its business to major industry players like Broadridge Financial Solutions. Broadridge recently bolstered its regulatory compliance services for broker-dealers by acquiring J&J's Execution Compliance and Surveillance Service, ECS, that business and its assets. The Broadridge transaction followed the sale of J&J's market data reporting MDR business to TRG Screen, a provider of market data enterprise subscription and spending management procedures and processes. But before we dive into those details, Tom, what do you see right now as the growing technology needs of Wall Street firms?
Sure, and thanks, Eugene, to you and Maureen for having me here, today. It's the trading environment. It's sort of interesting that there's always improvements going on there in terms of technology. In terms of speed and in terms of reliability, but it has to be driven by the regulatory needs also and the capability to bring on more customers. So you try and use new technology and you take into account regulatory needs. But more and more, I'm seeing that the focus is turning to your area, middle and back office, if you would, because the efficiency is so much in the front end already. So I see a lot of the trend toward middle and back office in terms of how do we improve the overall settlement process is what I'm hearing from the front end. The other part, and this is good news for us, is market data. We had a client that approached us a couple of weeks ago who said, market data is our third biggest spend, right? It's compensation number one. It's space number two, and market data is number three. Maybe market data will go above space, and we'll probably talk later about, working from home and things like that. But it's like, how much am I spending the right amount on market data? Am I spending too much money? Do I have duplicate services going on and in terms of the service? Are my people getting the right use of it? So there's a lot of work there in terms of the best practice in terms of market data. And you think about it, trading cannot go on without market data. So it's a big focus of the overall trading environment.
Just to step back for a little bit, you mentioned that there was, from the front office, more of a focus on middle and back office, in particular settlement. Why is that?
Cost. Cost efficiencies, right? You can optimize as much as you can about the front, but people realize there's a lot of manual processes going on in terms of the middle. In the middle, probably more than back. So it all has to do with the overall efficiencies of it. Can we make our business more efficient? And that's where the focus is. So, the whole straight-through processing angle, Eugene, and I think it's part of it.
Okay, so quickly, why did Jordan & Jordan sell key parts of its business to Broadridge and then to TRG Screen?
Yeah, well, TRG Screen, we had built a reporting service for market data, and it was really good. We had a lot of big clients on it, and it was a service to report correctly into the exchanges. In order to grow that business, Eugene, we would have had to build an inventory system because we were taking information from inventory, feeding it into our system. So for us to grow, we would have had to done that. So we looked at it, and TRG, Steve Matthews, who we know back from the Amgio days, was a good friend. So it just was logical to tie the two of them in together, and that's what we did. Broadridge was a little bit different in that we built a compliance service, and it's really pretty cool service because once you gather the trade information, you can use it for a lot of different reasons. You could use it for 606 reporting, you can use it for best execution, and then more recently, consolidated audit trail. You could use the information for TCA analysis. And so we were doing very well there. But in order to grow that business, you want to add other asset classes and you want to go globally. So that would have cost us more money to do. Broadridge was already in that space. They approached us and it was just a nice fit. And that's why we sold to them. And they're good
Okay.
people, part of
Mhm.
what we want to do, I mean, is that we want the people to wind up at a company where they're going to have a career and be able to go forward, and Broadridge fit that category.
And then were those transactions part of a long or short period of negotiation?
Um, to be fair, TRG was pretty short.
Oh,
Broadridge slowed down a little bit because of they bought a company called Activity, right?
oh, that's right. Yeah.
Remember,
Yeah.
you reported on that, Eugene,
Mm.
and that had a B after the price on the whole thing, right?
Mm.
So
Right.
it was a little bigger transaction than our transaction. So all hands on deck were on that one. And
Mhm.
so, I mean, in truth, for us, we just kept going at our business, and we kept on. And then when they came back, we had already signed up some additional clients. So, it took a little longer because of that, but it was just it was a good transaction.
Okay. And then in the wake of those transactions, you and the rest of J&J are going to be focusing on market data, the trading technology, and the association practices. So could you provide us a little bit, some details about the market data practice? Because you touched on it a little bit earlier, the market data licensing support, consulting, audit management, market data evaluation and optimization.
Yeah,
And that would be for for, I guess, obviously the sell side firms may already know, but perhaps some of the buy side firms may not be aware.
Yeah, no, it's a good summary of it is that the market data consulting piece in terms of helping people, sort of like the best practice of how do you manage market data? Am I spending too much money, too little amount of money in some cases? And in some cases, Eugene, even staffing, in some cases we'll actually put people on client sites. So it's a combination of doing studies for people, data governance studies, or putting people on sites. The second part is licensing. It's very complicated in the business. All the exchanges, all the vendors have different contracts. The dream is maybe we'll have a consistent contract someday. That's not going to happen real soon from that point of view. So we have attorneys on staff that are very familiar with licensing and know it really well. I mean, we have one going on now having to do with indexes. The complexity of, can I use this index? Can I not use this index? It's not an easy question or answer. The third part of it is audit business. The exchanges require audits for certain things, on whether you're doing quote meter or something called MISU, or vendor or reporting for somebody else. And we're on the official list. So when you call an exchange and say, who can do an audit, we'll do that audit. And then the fourth part of it is technology. And the technology piece, Eugene, is combining our knowledge of the business, the content, with the technology people. And it's sort of like what we did for ECS and MDR. So more to happen from that point of view.
Okay, and then quickly on the J&J technology practice, how is that different from the market data practice?
It's the technology part of that practice, right? So it's not people. It's like building a product or service, like we did for MDR, or we did for or we did for our compliance service, ECS. So there's a lot going on there in terms of even entitlements. We're doing a project on SPACs now, for example, in terms of helping people understand the use of SPACs. So it's the technology application of market data.
Okay. Switching gears a little, many of FTS followers are involved in the compliance effort for the Consolidated Audit Trail, also known as CAT. What is your assessment of where the CAT compliance is, as far where are firms as far as CAT compliance? Okay,
so we are where we are, right? Took a long time, as you know, a lot of disasters in between, including this and whatever else on the whole scheme of things, right? But it's in production now. And enforcement has started on it, and some of the firms on enforcement, they're not doing, the kind of reporting they should. So I think it's moving along fairly well. I mean, FINRA, Shelley Bowman is just doing a great job of managing the whole thing. There's some issues there, Eugene. There's information they're asking for, a social security number that's not really required, on it. So we have to be careful about things like that. And there's a couple of more scheduled coming up at the end of the year. The smaller firms will be reporting in July. More customer information will be provided, but it's on the right road. I mean, probably the best news of it all is Oates is being retired at the end of this month.
Yeah.
And if people had asked to guess on that, you know, they probably wouldn't have guessed it's going to happen as early as this. So I think we're on the right track, and, you know, we have to do a couple of modifications on it. But I think CAT is going to be something that's going to help the industry.
And just a little shameless plug here for FTF. We've had Shelley on a couple of panels, and she's been wonderful to work with to get the information out about CAT. Quickly, we keep hearing that the sell side, of course, has to know about CAT compliance. Does the buy side, should they be paying attention to this, or should they just ignore it because they've got so many other things to do?
I think the second one, right? You know, I mean,
Okay.
You got enough going on. I mean, the regulatory piece they probably should pay attention to is 606, because for 606, you know, you can ask your sell side, tell me where you routed the order, tell me about payment for order flow, those kind of things. So I think that's the thing they should probably be paying attention.
Okay. Switching gears again, the research information exchange markup language and the organization behind it. Why should more buy-side firms and sell-side firms know about this organization and the RIXML standard suite?
Because most of them use it someplace in the organization. The way research is communicated is using the RIXML protocol. Having said that, it's changing now from the point of view of, I used to just send you a PDF, right? Now, from a sell-side firm, I want you to come back to my website and get the information, because I'm paying on my research analysts a lot of money to write this stuff. I want to know who's reading that information. So there's a lot going on in that space. There's a new release that's going to be coming out on it, and they're doing a survey now on what would be included in it. But crypto is probably going to be in it. ESG is probably going to be in it. Video is probably going to be in it. Getting back to the question you asked about the buy side, there's a new initiative there in terms of the buy side and the sell side working together, because the sell side sends information to the buy side, right? They want to know who reads it. Some of the buy side firms do not want the sell side to know when they're reading it, at least not right away. So RIXML is in the middle of coming to a compromise, if you would, on that, because both of them have good points, but you have to come to agreement on, tell me the information. Maybe it's 60 days later, maybe it's 90 days later. So if the buy side's not involved in RIXML, they should be. Most recently, all the large buy side firms have gotten involved in RIXML, the top 7 or 8. Okay.
And another area is open source software, and that's been going on for a long time. It's kind of new, though, to the buy side. So what is your opinion of the open software movement, and for Wall Street firms, how can that change the dynamics for the buy side firms?
Yeah, you have to know about it. I mean, your developers have to know about all of that. When we did the sale to TRG and to Broadridge, as part of the asset agreement, you had to tell them what software you're using, right? And when I saw the list, I was even surprised that on the TRG transaction, we had 30 pieces of open source software, you know, small libraries that are part of it. On the ECS one, we had 63 pieces of open source software that were part of that solution. You just can't, you can't do the right thing for your firm nowadays by just doing homegrown software. You have to take advantage of this, so you have to be aware of it. And that would include both the buy side and the sell side. And that also includes standards, Eugene. You know, don't get too creative, you know, try and use as much of the standards to, again, lower the overall cost of doing business.
Yeah, because when I started covering all of this, I was covering the sell side for Waters Information Services. And I was running three newsletters, and then it all became Trading Technology Week. But there was a lot of competition to the point where the open source situation wasn't seriously considered until firms began to realize how much money they were spending on things that provided no competitive advantage.
Right.
So
Right.
So there's been an interesting shift on the sell side, and I think it's also well underway now on the buy side, where they realize what's the point? It's plumbing. It's plumbing, and let's,
And by the way, Eugene, it's tested also. When you write software, it's not tested, right?
Mhm.
Stuff is tested, so it works, right? So yeah, you really
Yeah.
have to use it.
Yeah, and sort of trust the open software situation, and if it doesn't come up to a standard, then you fix it. That's why you have internal staff or others or consultants to come in and
Right,
fix
right.
it. Yeah. And I just have a quick laundry list of other issues that maybe I could get your thoughts on. First of all, well, we're talking on Monday, August 2nd, 2021, and the pandemic hasn't really gone away. So what are your thoughts on what might be happening, some of the impacts on Wall Street firms and on Wall Street operations?
Depends on who the firm is, and depends on what you're doing within the firm, right? I had lunch on Thursday last week with a client, and 100% of their employees are back to work, right? And that's because the CEO wants the employees back at work, right? And if you're the CEO, you can make those kind of decisions on it. I think it depends in terms of except for that, what the job is. You asked about operations, right? In terms of it depends on what you're doing in operations, right? If you're in treasury operations, you probably should be in every day, right? Because you're working with the front office in terms of funding the business, right? So that's something that probably requires everyday type work. If you work with middle office and you're doing onboarding, maybe you should be in 3-4 days a week, right? Because you're going to be interacting with people on doing that. There's some back office operations that like P&S or overall securities movement. Maybe you come in 1-2 days a week, right? From that point of view, right? Or maybe not at all, right? Maybe it can be done. So I think it depends on what you wind up doing. The part you do have to come together for is for strategy, right? You have to come together for strategy, and then the bonding, right? As I mentioned to you, before on the beginning of the call, before we got on, we had Zephyrin Hall last week in Jersey City. We had all our employees there, right? And it was just a bonding exercise, right? And we met employees that we hadn't met. We hired them over Zoom, and we hadn't met them in person. And it was so good. And, you could just see the employees hugging each other, on that. And, as I said in the note afterward, there was more laughter I heard last Thursday than I have in over a year. So I think I think it shows that you can work remotely.
What about the concept of masking and testing and vaccination? Should there be some kind of mandate? Should Wall Street have a consistent mandate, or?
Yeah, I think it should be up to the firms. I mean, and the firms where we have employees, right, that go to work, they're following those, right? And in most cases, those firms have said, prove you. We'll follow the same lead. Prove you've been vaccinated, right? So you show that your vaccination certificate to the database, to the HR database, right? And if you haven't done that, then you're going to be tested on a weekly basis. In our case, as consultants, right, you're going to have to be vaccinated, right? From that point of view. Now, the people that don't work at client sites, right? We don't even have an office at this point in time because we were lucky enough that our space expired last December, right? On that. So we'll use the same judgment that I just mentioned in terms of what are the people's jobs, right? We have people are going out talking to clients. They'll have to be vaccinated, and so I think the federal government policy for their employees is probably a pretty good policy, right? You're vaccinated or you're tested, one or the other.
Yeah, better be safe than sorry. Yeah, and you just did I understand you that your physical location is no more? That you're sort of a virtual organization now?
Exactly right. Yeah, but we'll probably change that in January, right?
Oh, okay.
It just but Eugene, it'll be different than what we did before. It'll be coming together for collaboration and for planning and things like that type thing. So we're still in the process of working that out.
And then it's actually true for FTF. We're sort of virtual now too. I mean, we always pretty much were virtual, but even more so since the
Right.
pandemic. And the market is moving toward cryptocurrencies. And earlier you said that firms, so I assume that means front, middle, and back office people need to be aware of crypto and what's happening and how to create processes to make sure that things are running properly.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, when FIF, right, which we didn't talk about, right, that, it has over 100 broker dealers. I'm sorry, 100 firms, the big broker dealers, the big exchanges and the big vendors on that piece. And crypto's come into the conversation now, even though there's no regulatory piece of it yet, but it's coming in because the firms are trading crypto. So they have to figure out how they're going to handle it from an operations point of view. So we've started the initiative there about talking about it. It's going to be a group talking about it in, sometime this month about the operations part of it, and also about the best X. Even though there's not regulation, you still have responsibility of best X. So all the things that we've learned in terms of the securities assets, we're going to be applying on the crypto side of the business, because the firms are doing it, right? All the major broker dealers that we have are they're offering their clients the capability to trade crypto.
And then very quickly with Gary Gensler at the SEC and some others, it looks like there will be the regulators are going to review the situation, and there may be regulation to come this year or next. Or
I think you're right, Eugene. Yeah. I mean, it's if
you
had to guess what Gary's doing, that would be one of the ones that would be on.
Yeah, and you can certainly give a plug to FIF. You're right, I did forget to mention it. I mentioned that you started.
Yeah, no, it's the implementation side of the industry, right? When issues come up that have to be addressed. I mentioned 605, 606, really good relationship with the regulators, right? This whole thing, for this industry to work, and you guys do a good job at FTP, FTF on that.
Take the royalties for FTPs, though.
Right. On that piece, it's really the buy side, sell side, vendors and regulators working together, right? And FIF has a great relationship with the regulators, and they're talking to them about changes now for 605, 606.
Oh, okay.
We all have to work together on trying to make this business more efficient, and that's one of the things FIF does.
Quickly, two other areas, artificial intelligence. There's been a lot happening there. Machine learning, natural language processing. Does any of that excite you?
Yeah, for sure. It's just productivity again. I mentioned crypto before, not crypto. I mentioned SPACs before. The whole area of understanding what's happening. In terms of using AI to go and read the EDGAR databases or whatever you have to read and figure out what you're doing from that point of view is an area. As you've written about on your service, the onboarding is clearly part of AI. The more on the pricing, of it. But it's going to be more and more on the whole thing. We'd like to do something on the regulatory side of it also, Eugene, on the market data side of the business. Easier said than done, on the thing, but, we'll continue to work on that. But there's no doubt AI is already having an impact, and it will have more of an impact as we get into 2022.
It does seem to have really taken off. Now, is there another aspect of securities trading operations that I haven't mentioned that you think is important?
Yes, securities, stock interest type thing. You mentioned Gary Gensler. One of the items he's really concerned about is short selling, right? And there's a potential rule in terms of having firms report their short interest. Right now they report it I think every 2 weeks or something like that, and it's just by symbol. But the intent is to do it by firm and do it more consistently, maybe like daily. So that's going to be a big deal. And, the SEC is focused on the whole area of, what happened with Robinhood customers and stuff like that. And the Robinhood customers are really pushing on that. So there's going to be something happening there. So I think the whole short selling, even the stock lending piece is going to be a big part. It's hard to predict again with the new leadership at the SEC, but that's one of the items that's going to be addressed.
Okay, and just switching from the technology, this, as you know more than me, that this is an industry based on personal relationships and friendships. And you mentioned that recently you went to Harry's and had lunch there, and actually, I guess, had a bit of a chat with Harry himself. So, it's all and it's all connected, and we're connected. And as I started covering this in 1997, and then of course in 2001 we had 9/11, and now a month away is the forthcoming 20th anniversary of the terrorist attacks. Any thoughts you have? Any remembrances?
Just sort of chills when you talk about it, right? I mean, Kathy McGovern, who's on the phone here with us, she was getting off the Lexington Avenue subway at Wall Street that day, and had a tale about making it back to Jersey. Our head of market data at the time. Were you at Waters in 2001? Were you at Waters?
I had left in late 1999.
Okay.
So I was still in touch with everyone. I covered the events. I was working for mostly an IT publication, but I was one of my beats was Wall Street and the technology that they were using. The publication was called Info World, and I was oddly enough I was assigned to that Waters event on that day, and then at the last minute the editor sent me onto there used to be a fun thing on a very large cruise ship, and they took you out into the ocean, and people could go gambling and have fun at sea. And it was all IT managers from Wall Street.
I remember those. Yeah.
So I would have
been at that. That's why I was asking you, because the guy who was running market data for us at the time was supposed to be at that conference, right? And lucky for us, lucky for him, he had a deliverable that he hadn't completed, so he had to come to the office to do it, right? Otherwise, he would have been at that conference, the Waters conference that happened. But when I think about the day, I think about not just the firemen and the policemen that lost their lives, but the people that were just coming to work, and more their kids, Eugene, you know what I mean? They lost their mom and their dad, on it. And it's just such a, even, reflecting back on it, and it's just such a sad period for those kids, obviously, on it. So I think we'll have to think about a better remembrance than that when we get to.
But it's just hard to think that 20 years have passed. It's
Yeah, but it still brings chills when you mention it.
Yeah. Anyways, thank you so much for your time today. This has been great. It's been great. And good luck with the new chapter for J&J. And I guess that's lots for us to cover, and lots for you to do.
Okay, well, thank you, Eugene. And maybe someday you and Maureen and I can have a lunch back at Harry's.
Oh, I would love that.
Okay.
I think Maureen would love it too.
Thank you.